Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, one of the things we've been talking about, and I talked about it last week, is ice fishing. Ice fishing is just down the road from us right now. And it's important that we understand exactly some of the ramifications of ice fishing. And I think the most important thing, and I said it before, I can never talk about this too much, and that is safety. Safety is everything that we got to be aware of. And, you know, I talked to my buddy Jigger Jim about this because years ago, Jigger Jim went through the ice. He almost died. And when we started talking this morning, he said, I hate to almost talk about it. I said, Jim, don't talk about it if it's going to bring bad emotions to you, remembering almost dying when he went through the ice. He said, no, I want to save other people's life. And so we started talking about those things that are so important. He said the number one thing that a person should be aware of is to have a spud. In the old days, you'd actually start forming the hole in the ice with the spud. We're going back decades and decades. Now there's great augers for doing that and so forth. But the spud, he said, you don't need one of the heavy ones, just something lighter. And the spud should become a part of your very movement from the moment you enter the ice on. And being able to take that spud and to tap the ice in front of you and to feel it. Because he said, for example, first ice, they say that you should have at least 3 inches of ice to go out there in the beginning for first ice. But first ice can change. You can step one place and it be 3 inches, and then maybe in front of you it's only half an inch or something. By having a spud, you can tap and you can be aware of just what the thickness of the ice is. The other thing that he talked about, he said, the other thing that saved my life, he said, when I went in, and he said, as I think back to this, all the years of my life that I'd ice fished, you never think you're going to go in. And to this day, I don't know why that area where I stepped from one part to another the ice was so thin. But he said, ice picks saved my life. And he said, there's even been times now with tournaments where I've been part of putting a ice fishing tournament together. I'll be standing up there and talking to the crowd, and I'll say, does anybody not have ice picks? And he said, I would give it to them. And he says, I would announce to people for gifts for their loved one for Christmas or birthday or whatever, is to get them some ice picks. Because the picks, they're little picks that you have in each hand. If you go through, you can stab the ice where you've just gone through and try to keep yourself in that place until you can be rescued. Or maybe you can somehow pull yourself back on the ice. But I wouldn't count on that. But it's important that you are aware of this. It's so critical. The other things that Jim talked to me about, he said, people, the one thing they should always do. Now, these are very basics, and you'd think, well, this is common sense, which it is. But a lot of us don't use common sense all the time. And Jim said, be sure you let those people behind, whether it's your loved ones or whoever, know where you're going fishing. And tell them when you plan on returning. So let's say you say, well, I should be off the ice at 2 o'clock. And then it becomes 3 and then 4. They'll know where you went. You need to tell them where you're going and when you plan on returning. And he said, this is critical. But he says, you may get out there and there's all of a sudden a fog bank moves in, or it's snowing so hard you can't even see to find your way back to the shore. And this is very possible. And if you haven't been through this, you wouldn't know it. He said, stay calm and don't try to move. Stay there until you can see clearly again so you can get back to shore. These are all very common things. But he said when he grew up on Oneida Lake and was fishing all the time down there, he said, I had so many friends around me. We all went through the ice at one point or the other. There's lots of holes in that lake where gases come up from the bottom and they form bubbles on top, and that keeps the ice from really forming. And you wouldn't know about that if it's covered in snow or if it becomes a blizzard or whatever. It's important that you be aware of these things so that if you have a spud and if you have picks and you bring rope with you and you know that somebody knows where you are so you can wait out the different conditions, all these things are so critical. So we're talking about all the bad things. Bad things can happen in any aspect of life. Anything that we enjoy, there's always pluses and minuses. In ice fishing, these are some of the real critical things that we have to be aware of. Ice fishing can be a tremendous sport, but again, safety, no matter what we're doing, whether we're going on top of the ice, whether you're wading along a slippery rocky shore, whether you're mountain climbing, whether we're doing anything, it's important to be aware that safety should always come first. And if we can do that, I think we can enjoy the sport all the more. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.